Okay, cool guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going through Christopher Nolan's filmography and putting them in a tier list. It's going to be really cool. Got a special guest here, Chris, my friend in the UK. He's a fellow filmmaker, very talented dude. I'll drop his IG handle in the comments. In the description if you guys want to check it out with us. Chris, how are you going today?
More importantly, my name's also Chris, so I think that's why you wrote me into doing this.
Oh yes, yeah. This is my current series on
the battle of the Chris's.
Yeah, this is my current series on getting different Chris's to rate Christopher Nolan films. Jokes.
And other Chris actors, Chris Pratt.
Yeah, he'll be
Chris Pine.
He'll be on next month, hopefully.
That can be our next tier list. The Chris tier, the battle of the Chris's.
Let's actually do that. Anyway, yeah, so we're going to get straight into this today. We have got all Christopher Nolan's films here. Both Chris and myself have watched all these films, so it's going to be a good time. Okay, so first up we have Following. Chris, what do you think about this movie? It's obviously Christopher Nolan's first film, black and white. I think his brother helped him make it.
Yeah, so I think the budget was about $6,000, if I googled correctly. I can't remember that, but dude, it's in terms of story, it's great. In terms of like pacing, I think it was quite a lot to be desired in terms of the edit. Basically, so he shot it over a long period of time, and he tried to fill up that time that it was. That's what it felt like to me, anyway. That he had to fill the time of a full-length feature film on basically a student film budget. Yeah. So you can kind of tell. But in terms of the actual story, like I really loved it. Don't know what you thought.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I had like quite a suspenseful sort of like underlying like tone to the whole thing, and it is funny as well because one of the characters in this wears like a Batman shirt, and eventually he goes on to do Batman. I don't know if that was like I don't know if he always wanted to do Batman films, but I thought that was quite funny. And then also I just like Christopher Nolan's always been one of those directors who often like to write like his own movies and then or get his brothers to help him write them and then like direct them as well. And I think that's like really telling. Yeah. Like this film sort of set the bar for like what he was going to do in the future in a way. Like, so I don't know. I think it's a good film. So where would you rate this? Where do you think we should put this?
Yeah. I would chuck it. I mean, the story was great. Like the twist was really good. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for you. But I would kind of chuck it in the middle of the sort of middle, maybe C.
Okay, C for could have been better.
C for Chris.
C for Chris. Yeah, let's actually change this. C for Chris.
Yeah. I was honestly a bit confused by that movie because the actor like gets a haircut or something like quite early on, and because the way Christopher Nolan likes to edit in post, basically there's so much jumping in the timeline. Yeah. Like it's not really shot chronologically, and it jumps around between the different characters' perspectives. So I did get a little bit lost.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a common theme throughout all his films, I think.
Classic, yeah. It's classic Christopher Nolan. Speaking of non-chronological movies, next up we have Memento. What do you think of this one? This is a very underrated Christopher Nolan film in my opinion. I really enjoyed this one.
So this is a transition from his black and white to color.
Although there are some black and white sequences in this film, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He blended between them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically all the stuff that's filmed in reverse chronological order is in black and white, and everything that going forward is in color. I don't know if you picked that up,
but I did actually.
So it basically, if you imagine one storyline kind of going on the x-axis forward and the other one's going on the x-axis backwards, it jumps between the timeline as it goes, and then it gets to a point where it bends around and then comes back. So the story is just like the way the editing and the story is told as a whole is just mind-blowing in that movie.
Sure, that's
and you'll notice that all the stuff going in one direction is black and white, all the stuff going in the other direction is in color.
Sure, okay.
So it takes so much planning and like forethought to like do something like that. It's actually just crazy.
Yeah, and I think for me, like one of the reasons why I love this film as well is because it's a lot more like gritty and dark compared to some of Christopher Nolan's other films. Like I think as he's progressed as a filmmaker, he's almost trying to make films that are like sort of more appealing for like just the general audience, not in a bad way, but like they're just like more sort of tangible to the general audience. Whereas this film, like I feel like it is very dark and like gritty, and I guess some of the Batman films also pay tribute to that a bit. But yeah, I really like Memento. I think it's a very underrated film, and not enough people seem to have watched it for whatever reason.
One thing that I love about Christopher Nolan is he loves film, like the actual like film stock, film, shooting on film, and that's also a common theme throughout even his more recent films.
Yeah,
It's just got that feeling, and I think that helps a lot with Memento, like the the grain and just the feel of the overall mood of the film.
yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree with you on that. And yeah, it's cool that he pays attention to the actual like filmmaking itself. It's not just about like the actors or the characters. Like, yeah, I feel like his films are very technical as well in a good way. So, where should we put this one? I'm kind of feeling like B or A for this one personally, but I don't know.
I'd say for editing and it's just storytelling, it'll be yeah. I'm kind of halfway in between A and B at the moment as well.
Okay.
Simply because I think some of his later films like paid more attention to stuff like the sound design and the score, which elevates it just to the next level. Whereas Memento is more story driven, it's more visual, and which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't quite have those S tier
Yeah, qualities.
qualities like some of his other films do. So let's go B,
go B.
for now. We can
Yeah,
always
let's
leave
go
it
B
there.
for now. I like that. Okay, next up we have Insomnia, which is I don't know. I think this is one of the only films Christopher Nolan didn't write, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he wrote this film, but he
Yeah, I
did
believe
direct
so.
it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good film. It's got Al Pacino in it, Robin Williams, Hilary Swank, and it's a lot like Robin Williams in this film is like he plays a lot more of like a darker character than he usually does, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And Al Pacino, I always like him personally. So yeah, what do you think of this film?
Yeah, so I was going to say same thing about Robin Williams. Rip.
Yeah.
He you used to see him as like Aladdin or like Mrs. Doubtfire or a character that's full of life and energy, and this he's got it's kind of a different take on it. He's super dark and he's like trying to get kind of in the mind of a killer. Essentially, if you haven't watched the movie, again, I won't spoil it for you. It's really really worth checking out. But basically, it's set in this northern Alaska, I would say, America, and the original was actually I think based in Sweden, so it's a Swedish or Scandinavian book, or film. Sorry, yeah, original is a Scandinavian, some kind of Scandinavian film. So similar sort of thing. They have in the summertime they have extended days, so up to 12 hours of daylight. And that's kind of where this movie's set, and that's why it's called Insomnia, because Al Pacino's character just really battles to sleep. And this movie in particular of his has a really iconic opening scene. I don't know if you remember it, Dan, but it's basically like you see these close up of these hands like doing stuff with blood and basically like it's almost like a crime scene, and you think it's a certain character, and then later on it's revealed that it's actually not. So the twist again, Christopher Nolan, man, I don't know how he does it, but
yeah, there's some really great moments in this movie. Like I remember I think they like investigate like near this lake or something, and then it's like all misty, and then they see the killer there, and he's like, or they are right there, and they like almost go after him, but they lose them in the mist, and it's like. It's done so well. It's directed so well. And there's another scene like when they're chasing the one guy on like those logs, and then I think Al Pacino falls into the river or the lake or whatever, and he's like trapped underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like super suspenseful, and it's like, I don't know. It's just a really well directed film, with really good performances too. And again, it's like similar to Memento. Like I don't think enough people have really watched this movie. Like I love Christopher Nolan's like recent films. Obviously, they're amazing, but like. I wish people would also go back and like revisit these older films because they're also really really good. So yeah, I don't know. I really like Insomnia.
That's one film that I actually came back to visit more recently. I think that's actually the most recent film of his that I watched. So similar sort of thing. I mean, I just never knew it was one of his films until I actually like went in and did a bit more research. And I was so glad I found it. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I'd give it an A or an S for sure.
Yeah, I think let's put this one in A for now, because I feel like we're gonna put a lot of his films in the S tier eventually.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I think it's definitely high A or even like low S, honestly.
Yeah, really, really good.
Okay, so now we are going on to his first Batman feature film, which is Batman Begins, which revolutionized. Is that not even a word? I guess.
Revolutionized, definitely.
The Batman franchise at the point. I mean, Tim Burton kind of did a great job with the old school Batman in '98, but I mean
Liverpool
'89
Batman.
with Michael Keaton, the '89 Batman, like a really good film. But after that, it kind of just went a bit downhill for a lot of Batman fans and just general movie going audiences. But then Christopher Nolan came around.
Danny DeVito as Penguin.
Iconic. But I mean, even like Arnold Schwarzenegger as what's it, Mr. Freeze and stuff.
Mr. Freeze.
Jim Carrey as like Riddler. Like they were fun films and they were very campy and whatever. But I think like Christopher Nolan changed Batman for a lot of fans, and I think he's almost influenced how Batman's been like written as a character and put in movies and TV going forward from his films. Like I really think he had a huge influence not only on the character in films, but in comics and video games, etc. So, yeah, Batman Begins, really solid film. I love it. What are your thoughts on it?
Bro, straight to S tier for me.
Okay.
Not only did it revolutionize sort of superhero films and Batman in particular, but also sound design, just tension, storytelling ability, again, is just right up there. You can tell by this point he's really kind of hitting his stride in how he likes to make films in terms of the minimal amount of visual effects that had to go into this film. He loves to shoot everything in camera with practical effects, and you can really tell it makes a difference. The only kind of time you can notice it, I don't know if you know this, but they lock down on the island and all the bridges are basically cut off, and they're all hallucinating on the gas. And there's a Batman flies over the city, and it's like a shot where basically from the street perspective up, and there's like a bat flying over, and you can kind of see it's like a doll or something. It's kind of funny, it makes me laugh, but to be fair, they're all tripping basically on this gas at that time, so it makes sense that it wouldn't look 100% realistic. But that's the only one thing. Basically, if I could give it any, I'm trying to basically fish for something to look that's bad about this film, and that's kind of the only thing. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think there's also a few twists in this movie which I won't spoil, but it's a really like good film. It's a really good introduction to this new version of Batman that we'd be seeing going forward with Christian Bale, and I just like, I think, in my opinion, this might be my favorite looking version of Gotham in Christopher Nolan's films. I said this in my one tier list video recently, but like I think going forward, like his movies, his Batman films almost got like, they started just looking like normal cities, which is not a bad thing. But I kind of like the more stylized, gritty version of Gotham in Batman Begins personally. And yeah, I really liked just the reintroduction of like Batman in this. I thought it was a good like origin story almost for Batman, which we hadn't really seen in films before this. And yeah, I don't know, I think Christian Bale was amazing. Cillian Murphy as like the Scarecrow was also good, and Liam Neeson obviously fantastic. So it was a really good cast too. And then also Hans Zimmer's score, like I think his scores got better as he went for the Batman films, but even just as a standalone film, the score in this movie is insane. Like it's so good. It's like iconic at this point. So
I think the most iconic score is still to come, but it was definitely a movie that was a turning point for Chris, in my opinion. That's when a lot of people really sat up and saw what his filmmaking capabilities could be with good music, with a big budget backing him, and kind of him being a fan of Batman himself, and how he's able to take that character and the vision for it and turn it into a feature-length film like this. It's just, this for me is like where I became a Christopher Nolan fanboy. From this film. And I played all the Batman games as well. I don't know if you played them, but like this for me like really stuck towards the best sort of origin story for Batman, with the Ra's al Ghul part, with which is Liam Neeson's character, that whole training sequence, and like how he basically became not only a good Batman but like a good Bruce Wayne as well. So, I really enjoyed the whole setup of this whole movie. It is quite a long film, but yeah.
It's worth it. Okay. Yeah.
Just a side note quickly, it's funny. I watched this movie with my brother, who's a bit younger than me. He's about 3 years younger than me. And so I was about 15 when it came out. I can't remember exactly. What year did it come out?
I think 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Or 2007
Yeah,
maybe.
so
but
I
think
was
it 2005.
14, 15. I was quite young. So my younger brother went to watch it with me, and he was like terrified. He like to this day like he doesn't really like the movie. I think just because it was so scary for him as like a little 12-year-old kid, especially the parts where the scarecrow puts on the mask and little bugs crawl out of his
Yeah,
mouth.
dude, it's some like legit like
It's
terrifying.
traumatizing for little kids.
Yeah, dude, like it was unexpected. Like I remember, like when this movie first came out, my parents actually didn't want me to watch it because they thought it was like too much. For
Yeah.
because I was a bit younger than you at that time. But
Yeah,
like
I think
it's like it does go into that sort of horror element at times with regards to the scarecrow,
yeah.
which is cool.
And I think my parents had an idea in their mind of what the Batman films were like
Yeah.
from the previous few, and then we saw this, and it was just like a real eye opener.
Yeah.
But I loved it even the first time I watched it, yeah, and subsequently I've watched it a couple of times. So that's straight to S tier for me, Dan.
Now I'm keen for S tier. I would say it's my second favorite of Christopher Nolan's Batman films, because I mean the first has to be Dark Knight for me, but we'll talk about that just now. Next up is The Prestige, which again is like a fantastic film. Like, I flipping love this movie. There's a lot of like twists in this movie too, and it's like, dude, it's a movie that no one talks about really. Sometimes I don't know. Like even in general, Christopher Nolan like
Yeah,
fan circles, like not many people talk about this movie, and I think it's like really well written, really awesome characters, and it's like such an original story as well. Like I've never seen a film that touches on this sort of stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, Hugh
I mean,
Jackman
David Bowie as a
and David Bowie. Yeah, it's crazy.
he's in his character Tesla. That was amazing performance by him. So well cast. Like even though his characters kind of repeat in films, like Christian Bale just come off doing Batman, and he's in this again with Hugh Jackman. It's crazy how Chris just lets them have a vision for their character as well as having a vision for the character himself, and he kind of, I think, writes with certain actors in mind when he wants to cast.
Yeah,
And for me, actually, might be a bit controversial, but this is probably my favorite Christopher Nolan film.
dude, I can totally see why. Like, it's probably like might be in my top three for Christopher Nolan stuff as well. Like, it's super good. It's like really well like set up with regards to world building and stuff like that, and then also just like Michael Caine's character in this is so cool. Like, I don't know, his character in this is
Magician,
really awesome.
his assistant.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's hard to talk
But
about.
he
this.
can make a magician's assistant look really cool. Yeah.
I don't know. He's got like some really good quotes in this movie that I always think about.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say something else now. Yeah, I don't know. These sort of like movies about like illusion and like like trying to trick you or whatever. Like they sometimes feel very cheap and just like poorly put together.
Yeah.
But like at the end of this film, like the stuff that's revealed that's almost like fooled you as an audience. Like the trick was almost on you as an audience as well.
Yeah.
And the whole time, like you don't really pick up on that until the end, really. And it's like it's just really cleverly done. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's super underrated. I really like this one.
Yeah. What's crazy about this film for me is he gives away the whole plot in basically the first 5 minutes of the film, like through the dialogue and through that whole setting up of how a trick is basically performed. It sets up the whole plot. Once the second time I watched this movie, my mind was blown. Like the first time it was blown at the end, but the second time my mind was blown throughout the whole movie because they're just hinting towards the big reveal at the end, basically through the entirety of the film. And it's so subtle, but it's when you watch it back, it seems so obvious, and you're like, how could I not pick this up in the first time watching it? But you're just so absorbed in the moment, and it's on your first viewing. So if you haven't watched this a second time, please do yourself a favor, go watch and listen to the dialogue, listen to the little nuances in the performance, and how it just sets it up. And for that reason, I think that's why it's one of my favorite films. Just the way it's subtle, but it's so obvious.
Yeah, and I think like what also really elevates this film is just the like chemistry that Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale have together. Like,
Yeah,
because they're almost like partners, and then they're like a bit of like they rival each other a little bit here and there, and it's really just well done. So I agree with you as well, though. Like, second viewing makes this film even way better than the first one. So if people haven't seen it
yeah.
for the second time, I do agree. It's even better as you watch it more, I feel, which I think is the case for a
Well,
lot of Christopher Nolan films too.
true. Second, third, fourth, fifth time even.
Yeah,
Still
yeah,
something you can get out of it. Also, kind of one thing we haven't really talked about is just the aesthetic of the film. It's just graded so well. I don't know who did the grading on this film, but it's one of the better ones, I think. It just looks amazing. The whole setting, like the Victorian sort of style.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's weird because there was another magic movie that came out around, like a movie about magic that came out around the same time.
it's
I
called
think
The
it was called The
Illusionist.
Magician.
It's called
The
The
Illusionist,
Illusionist with
yes.
Edward Norton.
And
Yeah,
I hated that movie. I thought it was so bad. And in my mind, because they came out at a similar time, at first I kind of associated them with each other. And but then when I watched this after watching The Illusionist, I was like, that's how you make a movie about illusions and magic, because it was just next level.
yeah. I think we won't talk about this too long because I know it's not about this film. But The Illusionist for me, like, it almost felt that's like the sort of issue I have with these sort of like magician films is like it almost
Exactly.
it makes like the magic almost feel like unrealistic and almost like cheap in a way. Whereas the Prestige,
Yeah.
like it bases everything on like reality, and like you're given the idea of what the world is and what the rules are in this world, and it's like very realistic, and so
Yeah.
that sort of puts your expectations at a certain place going forward through the film. And then when stuff does happen, you're like, oh, okay, like you find it believable, but also like
Yeah.
super interesting. I don't know if that any of that makes
Yeah.
sense, but I'm trying not to give stuff away. But
Do you know what
Prestige
helps
is
with that
definitely
again
better.
is you know what helps with that again is definitely the practical effects.
Sure.
There's no visual effects added in post, and just that fact makes it like next level because the things that you've seen are actually like sort of really happening. And obviously, with a bit of tricks of editing and stuff here and there,
Mm.
but yeah, I think that's what elevates it up. So, what do you think, Dan? Where's it going on the list?
I like it. I'm keen for S tier personally. Like, I really like this film.
Well,
So
I
yeah,
already said it's probably my favorite Christopher Nolan film, so straight to the top for me.
straight to S tier. Let's go. Okay, cool.
You know what's hard is how do you differentiate between all these S tier films that he's going to have?
I know. We have to do like a
They're
separate
gonna
tier
all be-
list just for S tier
Yeah,
films.
S.1, S.2. Yeah,
Okay, speaking of S tier films, we have The Dark Knight next, which is arguably probably I would say this is like Christopher Nolan's most popular film, if I'm honest. I
yeah,
don't know if you agree with
yeah,
that or not, but
yeah. I
this
probably
this
agree.
this film, like I think Batman Begins definitely put him more in like the public eye, but then The Dark Knight like shot him to the top of like some of the best filmmakers of this current time, in my opinion. What do you think of The Dark Knight?
Oh man, where do you even start?
It's
I
great.
think what really elevated this movie at the time was the casting of Heath Ledger. He had kind of been in movies like Brokeback Mountain. He had been in 10 Things I Hate About You, and people kind of had this expectation of the characters he would typically play, and then for him to bring a performance like this, it's just oh man, how do you even begin to describe it?
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, like, it's very interesting that you mentioned that because I think because of his casting, a lot of people started like talking about this movie way before it came out. Like, obviously, it was already like
Yeah,
enough hype about it because also at the end of Batman Begins, the reveal that Joker would be coming in the franchise. But I think
yeah,
like with the casting of Heath Ledger, people were just like going crazy, and like the internet at that time as well was like quite raucous. It still is raucous, but like people then like if they had an opinion, they were like like blasting it everywhere. And
yeah,
obviously it was a
sure,
bit of like a yeah, people weren't super happy with it just because of the films he had done before, and I get that. But then the film comes out and he completely like steals nearly every scene he's in, and he is considered now like one of the greatest villains in cinematic history. And I think it's like fair to say that he deserves that title. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's a really good film. Again, like it elevates stuff that was established in Batman Begins. There's a lot more like tension in this film. There's a lot more like, I don't know. There's a lot more like drama almost in a way. And like I like the dynamic that is sort of between Joker and Batman. Like they don't necessarily always have to be in the same room, but they're constantly like fighting each other through different things. So yeah, I think this is great. This movie also was one of the like a lot of villains seem to do this in movies now, where they like almost like record themselves and like send it to like news broadcasts and stuff. And like a lot of movies do that now, and I think this was the first movie to do it. So it's definitely been influential on films like comic book movies and normal films. Like it's been a huge influence, I think.
Yeah, that's going to be my next point, that this is not just one of the best comic book or superhero films, it's one of the best films, you know, kind of, in my opinion, of all time. And this is also where the sound design and the score just really took the next step up. I think he wanted to do something a bit different from what he had done before, a bit of similar, in the same sort of world as the first Batman, but just there's different elements, like when the Joker's on screen, and the razor blade on the guitar and just everything really just underpins the tension of the film, and how the volume slowly rises and how it just basically builds up. It's mind-blowing, man.
Yeah, and I think like another thing about the Joker character, like I kind of like that he wasn't really given much of an origin story, because it made him a very like unpredictable character. So you never kind of knew what his motives were going to be. Like you never knew how far he was going to push things, which is just really interesting. And like he also, there's like a bunch of moments in the film where like he almost like tells a different story of his like how he got his scars or whatever. And it's become a bit of a meme at this point, but in the movie it's still really well executed. And I think it's cool because like you don't know like if any of those stories are like true or false, or you know, like it just makes a really cool character. And I think Heath Ledger like embodies this character so well. Still probably my favorite Joker, in my opinion. Even though Joaquin Phoenix did a great job, I still think Heath Ledger's at the top.
Phoenix was great as well. That's kind of, it's one sort of scene that could sum that all up is the end scene when he's dangling and he's talking to Batman, and he's kind of waiting for these two boats to just start exploding, and he thinks that humanity sort of shares the same views of him as like this anarchist, like nothing really matters, like people are inherently evil. That's kind of like one of the themes as well. And to his surprise, the boats don't blow up, and he's kind of, that's the first time you kind of see a bit of a crack in his ideology. Like, why are these people not blowing each other up? They criminals, you know. why are the good people not blowing up the criminals? Why is no one being killed? And that's, if you think about it, Batman's whole philosophy is he doesn't kill. So it that whole parallel between Batman's character and basically the antithesis being the Joker is just so well done in this film. It's like, how do you say into words what kind of relationship that has been developed throughout the films.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I think also the action in this one's like really cool, especially like the stuff on the in the Batmobile, and there's a part where they like flip the truck over, and that was all like practical. Like that's insane. So yeah, I think this movie. I think also this is one of the. I can't remember if he used IMAX cameras on Batman Begins or not, but I know that like IMAX films were heavily used in this film, which does make some of the more like high intensity action sequences like feel insane. Even like the opening scene where they're like robbing the bank, like it's just so good.
So iconic.
Yeah, it really is. And again, like I think it's been very influential on films going forward. Anything else you want to say about The Dark Knights?
It's just literally like if you picture any scene, you can say something is great about it. Like the way it was lit, the locations they managed to use. I think this is a better Gotham City. I know you said the first one was better, but I kind of like this Gotham City, the aesthetic that they got. You know, just the whole look of it. It's crazy. You mentioned they shot kind of on IMAX cameras in some scenes, and they're shot on normal cameras, probably the Alexa or whatever, or the film camera. and some of the other scenes, and you can actually see the aspect ratio changes
Yeah.
in different scenes. Like the scenes that they shot at night, I think you needed a camera with a bit more digital that could like bump the ISO up and get a good exposure. So like there's a slightly different aspect ratios and stuff, and it's so subtle you don't even notice it, but it really actually helps with the storytelling and believing this character could exist in the real world.
No, I definitely agree. And then one final thing I want to say about this is I like the inclusion of Harvey Dent's character because he's almost like the hero with like a face. Like the Batman's like the hidden vigilante
Yeah.
hero, and then like Harvey Dent's like almost like the white knight. And just interesting seeing how that character is sort of influenced by things that happen in the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but yeah, it was really cool having that sort of different character in the movie, portraying a similar, like he was trying to be like a hero, but also seeing how like heroes can be, corrupted or whatever. I thought that was really interesting. And then finally, just also the interrogation scene between Joker and Batman. It's like
Yeah.
probably like one of the best scenes of movies ever for me. Still, it's like it's so iconic. So yeah,
When it's just dark and you just see him go, oh
Dude.
man, that just literally gave me goosebumps just thinking
so
about
good.
it.
Dude. It's a very well made film. So yeah, I think S tier.
Yeah.
You happy with S tier?
Straight to S tier, man.
S-tier.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Okay. Next up.
Just I'll say one last.
Yeah.
I'll just say one last thing about how you're talking about Harvey Dent. So if you imagine, like I was saying earlier, kind of Joker's on the extreme side of the scale, Batman's on the other extreme side of the scale, and it's appropriate that Two-Face, Harvey Dent is straight down the middle. He's like a bit of good and a bit of bad, all kind of wrapped up into one by the end of the film. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
No, for sure. It's a great film, man. It's one of his best movies still, and it's like one of the best Batman movies ever, and I think it always will be.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Inception, which is one of my personal favorites of the bunch. Yeah, this movie,
Same.
dude. I remember watching this movie for the first time, and so I would say like the OG Spider-Man films and like the prequels like got me into movies a lot. But then like I think Inception like just pushed me into like a whole new gear with regards to like loving movies. Like I didn't think movies could be this awesome, I was mind blown, dude. Like, because at the time as well, like I must also just say this, I hadn't actually seen The Dark Knight or Batman Begins like until like I was like an early teenager. So like I'd actually seen
Yeah,
Inception.
because you weren't allowed.
Yeah, so I'd actually seen Inception before like the Batman films. So this was like also one of my first sort of introductions to Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, and I think that's why it was also super impactful for me.
Awesome. I think this movie has been one of the most influential movies on modern cinema. Think about the way they did their trailer with the
Oh yeah,
with Hans Zimmer with the bomb. That's literally like, how many times have you seen that since this movie? This was the first movie to do that. Like, a lot of people don't know that. This was so iconic in terms of the sound design and the score. Like, if you Google the score on YouTube, you'll literally see millions and millions of views, just people watching the live performance of just the score, like no visuals or anything. It's just mind blowing. This movie.
yeah. No, it's really good. It's a quite a complex film as well, and I know people do get a bit confused on like where things go and like if there's any plot holes or whatever. I don't feel like there are normally. Like I feel like it's quite like well established and well set up. I really like the cast. I think it's really really good, and yeah, just the whole dynamic of like Cobb's the main character played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and like just how like he's almost trying to run away from like the trauma he's had, but while he's running away, he's almost running into it again, like in a weird way. So like he's trying to let go, but he's actually holding on still, and he doesn't really know he's doing that. And I think that's like a really interesting sort of character arc that he has to deal with throughout the film. And yeah, it's just like really really awesome action sequences. At times it almost feels like a bit of like a James Bond film, which I think Christopher Nolan's like been heavily influenced by growing up. So yeah. It's just a really awesome movie. As you said, the score's amazing. Visuals are amazing in this one as well, and I think it's one of his best films for me still. Yeah.
I watched an interview with Christopher Nolan about this movie, and he said it's essentially a heist film at its core, like, which blew my mind because it's so true. If you think about it, these guys go into basically a subconscious to break through a vault of the subconscious, essentially to place an idea in someone's head. Once he said that, it kind of just unlocked a new perspective, kind of like you said about it being almost like a James Bond film. To me, like, I didn't think about it that way. I just thought, oh, what a cool film. But when you think about it like that, it's so much more interesting to watch, and how he actually plays into that with some of the scenes, some of the action, the car going off the bridge, like all those kind of shots.
Yeah, and even just like the hotel scene where like the hotel hallways like going
So
upside
good.
down, like, and that was like all practical. Dude, it's insane. It's like such a good film. So I mean, I'm feeling like S tier for this one too, personally.
Ah man, straight to this
Yeah,
here.
hell yeah.
You know what's crazy about this film is it's like this is what filmmaking can be with a good idea and a big budget.
Yeah.
Because some of those contraptions and stuff they made for the practical effects, like you said, that big spinning room, like when it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Cillian Murphy's characters talking in the bar and the water starts to leave. That's all. They had to strap the cameras down. There's actual crew standing there, like trying to film that, and all the extras in the background have to kind of act casual, like as if they're not getting tipped upside down.
Yeah.
It's just the performances, not only by the lead cast, which are insane, but also the extras, the actual people who worked on the sets. It's just that's what elevates, that's what makes a film what it is, because it's not Chris Nolan just making one film. It's a whole crew. It's a whole
Yeah.
engineering team.
No, definitely, dude. And like, if you guys haven't seen the behind the scenes on this movie, like, definitely go check it out. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's actually incredible. Like, I think that whole or most of that like sort of base or building at the end of the film, like where like the final action sequence takes place. I think they pretty much built all of that from scratch as well, which is like insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a solid film. It's really good. Yeah, I love it.
Well, yeah. One good scene to note for practical effects is, I think it's closer to the beginning, but when they flood the room, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is standing there, and he's just kind of in this big hallway, like entrance with stairs everywhere, and there's just water just floods through the walls. I mean, it's hard to nail something in one take, because how many times could you literally like wet your entire set with giant buckets of water? Like you really had to be next level to nail that on the first try. So in terms of story, in terms of sound design, in terms of acting performances, both from the cast and the crew, and directing, filming, it's hard to make a better film than this. Like how can you really perfect this? Like I can't think of any flaws in this movie, to be honest.
Yeah, no, same. It's really good. I flipping love Inception. So S tier, I think it deserves that spot.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Christopher Nolan's final Batman film in the trilogy, Dark Knight Rises. So, I still really love this film, and I can understand why it might be people's least favorite, but I still think technically it's a really well-made film. I love Tom Hardy as Bane. It's a really cool character. Like, following up the performance from Heath Ledger's Joker, like, it must have been very stressful and like hectic, but I think he did a really good job. Yeah, I enjoy this film. What are your thoughts on it?
It wasn't initially my favorite of the Batman trilogy, but I read something that I found super fascinating, and that the three films, one is Batman's mind being broken, which is the Scarecrow. The one is his spirit being broken, which is obviously the Joker, and trying to get him to sway his morality. And the third one is getting his body broken, and that's what this kind of film is about. And it's how Batman can recover from being broken spiritually, mentally, physically, on all sort of levels. And for me, this is an epitome of what Batman as a character is. Like, you've kind of seen him in the other two films now. It must have been quite hard to come back and actually play this character again, when everyone kind of had a prediction of what they thought the movie was going to be like. But the whole Lazarus Pit thing was just, I thought that was really great. Like the score, what many people don't know, it's actually it's in a different time signature. I think it's in 5. So it's when they're chanting the dun 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 dun. It's it creates a tension as he's rising up out of the pit, and that's kind of a big theme throughout the movie, like Batman rising. The Dark Knight Rises.
No, I think it's a really solid film. There were a few things that I didn't quite like that don't really make sense to me. Like when he has that whole thing on the bridge, like with the the bat symbol on. I'm like, he's trying to like almost save the city, yet he had the time to like go put like a whole sort of bat symbol on.
Put some chalk.
You know, like but the one where he puts it on fire, like
Yeah.
I'm like, so some of that stuff was like a bit like, I don't know, but like I give it a pass because the film itself is really good and it's like it's really well made. I liked Anne Hathaway's inclusion as Catwoman. I thought she was cool. And yeah, like I think it's a really solid film. I like also how it like I don't know. It's nice that like there were a few scenes that almost take place in the daytime. Like the final action scene was like a daytime shots, and you don't really get those in Batman films.
Yeah.
And I kind of like how that was a bit different. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty good film.
Yeah, and so one thing I really like about Christopher Nolan's movies is similar to what I said about The Prestige. His intros basically set up the film in such a good way. Like you dropped into the action in this movie, like with the plane scene, and they're basically like interrogating this prison. You literally have no context. You have no idea who this guy is, but you're so invested because of just the scale and the intensity of the opening scene. It's when you're introduced to the Bane's character, and as an observer, it's so cool to watch the story unfold from that perspective. You don't really know. It doesn't just cut to Batman. You only see him like way later in the film. Actually, you don't see. It's not like this is a Batman film. It's like this is what's happening, and then Batman rises through that. Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I thought it was cool as well. And I think like some people had like an issue with the ending almost like hinting at Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character being like a new Batman. But I kind of liked the whole idea of like how at the end of this trilogy, it's almost like implying that anyone in Gotham could embody what Batman stood for in a way. Because Batman, like he was like Gotham's almost like savior, and like he was the hero of Gotham. And I think like at the end of this film, it's almost suggesting that the people of Gotham, like no matter like what past they've had and all the crime that's been involved there, like anyone can sort of step up and become a Batman embodiment almost. And I thought that was quite cool. So yeah, I'm also really glad that they didn't make more films after this. I think it was like a good ending to this trilogy. And yeah, like I think technically again, it's like really well done, beautiful shots in this movie, cinematography, and yeah, like the opening plane scene is like incredible. Like a lot of that was practical. So yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, just to say, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, they set him up to be Robin, not Batman.
Oh, okay.
So in the last scene, they basically like they talk about how he was an orphan and Bruce Wayne was funding that orphanage. He figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He kind of knew from earlier, and then he says, I can't remember the exact line, but he says something about like my real name is actually Robin, and then that's kind of what they're setting up. Not that he's
okay, cool.
Batman. Watch it again.
I haven't watched this one in a while.
Oh, okay. So he's actually like helping Batman this whole time, and Batman's kind of like training him to like be the next Robin or whatever.
That's actually cool.
And one last final sort of thought about the film. It's such a good trilogy because it really does come to such a great conclusion. Like, kind of like the iconic Inception scene where the top is just spinning on the table. Like, he doesn't leave it in such a cliffhanger. It's like you see him fly off into the distance with the bomb, and then an explosion happen, and you just assume the worst, right? You just assume that he's made the ultimate sacrifice. But then the last scene where Michael Caine basically his vision of seeing Christian Bale's character across the, in an Italian villa or Italian restaurant eating with his chick. The way they just like acknowledge each other and they're just kind of content. It was just such a satisfying end to such a great trilogy, I felt.
No, I definitely agree. So where would you put this one? I'm kind of leaning towards A because I don't think it's as strong as the other ones, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say A tier as well, yeah.
Happy with that? Okay, so we're down to the final 3 films that he's currently made. So Interstellar's up next, which again is quality in my opinion. But let me just say this as we start this off here. I had so much hype after Inception and after seeing the Batman films at this point that I think like my initial expectations of Interstellar weren't like they were good, but like I was like, okay, it wasn't his best film. But I think over the years, revisiting this film and going back to it, like I've just realized how actually insane this film really is and how good it is. And I think again, like The Prestige, like once you've watched it more times, you can actually appreciate what it was doing more.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is a good movie. I flipping love this movie.
I might just take back my previous statement about The Prestige being my favorite, and I might say Interstellar's up there with my favorite. I literally I was basically in tears at the end of this movie. It's one of the movies that he really captures the emotion of the film in a way that he hadn't previously. Like it kind of played on characters and their ideals and their morals, and those being tested. Where this is it's a man's relationship with his child, and if you break it down into its like pure essence of the film, that's what it is. And the way that plays out through Matthew McConaughey's character, I thought his performance in this was really one of his better films. And that whole scene, that's a bit of a meme now, but the Murph scene when he's like flying up and watching the video, basically watching his kids grow up while he stays the same age. And just again, there's such mind-blowing things and such forward thinking and such industry leading things that happen in this movie that are just mind-blowing. This the science that went into the research and even to the visual effects, like the way they did the black hole and the way light would interact with that and bend around it, actually led to the guys writing a paper and like being published in these scientific journals and stuff because of the discoveries they made just from researching and coming up with formulas and stuff for the film.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, like totally agree with you on all the like the scientific research that went into it. And I think like in the movie, like you kind of like they kind of suggest at times like what's going to happen once they get into like space and whatever, but like you almost experience stuff the same way as the characters are. Like so like they've been told that certain things are going to happen, like time's going to move differently on this planet, for example, and then they get there, and then once they go back, you're like, oh, it's actually happened. And like I think again, like that scene where
it's been 84 years.
Like when Matthew McConaughey is like hearing back from his kids, like it's a heartbreaking. Like you don't really know how you would react in a situation like that. And I think, yeah, his performance is absolutely amazing in this. It's also just a very unpredictable film. Like you almost feel like you are going into the unknown with these characters. Like even when Matthew McConaughey goes to that like snowy ice planet, like it's a very like
Matt Damon's character.
Matt Damon's on that planet, but like it's a very like sort of intense scene, but it's not like intense, if that makes sense. Like you're almost at the edge of your seat because you don't know what to expect, but it's like I don't know, it's got this really interesting feeling to it, and I think it's also just a very interesting look on what the sort of direction of humanity could take if we're not careful. Like I felt like it was a very realistic scenario that could play out if stuff isn't changed now, which I thought was cool as well.
I think that was kind of the great direction to choose for a sci-fi, because it's set in a future, but it's not this like dystopian Blade Runner type future. It's more like realistic in terms of the food shortage, global warming, the need to like not be able to live on the planet and find a new home essentially for humanity. It's an interesting premise based on parts of reality. And then just to your point about the practicality of the theory of relativity, which is kind of what the sciencey part of this is based on. For me, the most iconic scene was when they go down to the water planet and there's this massive waves and the TARS is like running in like this weird robot, and he carries Anne Hathaway back to the ship, and then they go back. Literally, all that's happened in that. They go back to the ship and the dude's been chilling there for 80 years or 70, what did he say? Like, I can't remember the exact amount, but 30 something, 40, 50 years. Like he thought about leaving, he thought about going back, and they literally just, like 100, 200 Ks away. And that's how much time has changed and been affected by gravity. And that for me, when they got back to the ship and you see how old the guy is and how he's just had to basically sacrifice half his life because he's just knowing that time is going to pass, but it's for the greater cause. So he just waits for them. It's
And
insane.
just I think a lot of hardcore Christopher Nolan fans already know this, but apparently on that water planet, like the hunts in the score, like each like I think it's like each beat
Yeah,
or something is like a day or something that's passing in like the normal
yeah,
Earth world or whatever, and it's just like
yeah. Another
yeah,
meme. Every second here is a year on
but it's
Earth
just
or
like it's
whatever.
like when you watch it again, knowing that like it's so intense because you just like these moments are almost like impacting like the whole
Yeah,
world, and it's just like it's just a moment, you know. So it's such a
yeah,
good movie, man. I want to watch it again like right now.
yeah. Actually, you want to watch it again as well. I know people who don't like watching it or like who didn't enjoy it as much because of two things: A, it's so long, and B, the end
Mm.
scene where like he's like in that weird cube, spherical, fourth dimension sort of barrier. But that actually for me was such a great scene because it's not about what you're physically looking at. It's about the connection that he has with his daughter. Again, going back to the theme of it's a film about a man with his daughter and their
Mm.
relationship, and that kind of culminates at that point um, when he realizes what a mistake. And that gets another meme from that. Don't go.
Yeah,
What does he say? Don't
yeah,
leave.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was just that's the point where the whole film for me just really again came to a point, and I was like literally like floored because I was watching in the cinema. I remember clearly I was sitting towards the back. I think I even watched this in IMAX, and I
Mm.
was just like completely absorbed in for the whole movie. Like I walked out into the day, and I was just like, I can't believe what I
Yeah.
just watched. So for me, it would go straight
Yeah,
to
I
S
agree with
tier.
you. It's gonna go S tier. And like a lot of people don't like the final moments he has with his daughter, like in the hospital or whatever it was, like when she's like
She's in the
super old.
hospital. Yeah,
But I thought that was like a good sort of conclusion. Like it made a sacrifice of his life and of his children worth it almost. Like I don't know. So
yeah.
I love this one. I think it's one of his best.
I think the daughter kind of accepted at that point as well. She had lived her life. Um, she had they essentially as a team had helped humanity even at different rates. They had both essentially given their entire lives to progressing um, the survival of humanity, and that's kind of what that last scene is about for me.
Yeah, for sure. Um. Okay, next up we have Dunkirk. So this film, I think when did this film come out in 2017?
Somewhere
Yeah.
around there.
So this was a solid film. It was very like unorthodox almost for Christopher Nolan sort of films. Like it was like just spectacle this time around. It wasn't really a very character focused film. It was more just like an experience in a lot of ways, which I don't mind. I definitely don't think it's near his strongest film, but I still think it's a very solid film. Some of like the dog fights and stuff that happen in this film are like insane, like in the airplanes and that,
Yeah,
and some also just like really intense moments when they're like I think it's like the ship it's like sinking and some of the characters are like in the ship. So I think it's a really good film. I like the also like the non-linear sort of approach to it. I think it's told in like three separate stories that are all like kind of happening at the same time. So yeah, I think it's
yeah.
good.
What said one happens over a week, one happens over a day, and one happens over an
Something
hour
like
or
it,
something
yeah.
like that. So that's the three different stories. So, yeah, it's one of a recurring theme, even from all the way back to The Following, his original first film, is the way he plays with time and time manipulation. It's there in Memento, it's there in the Batman trilogy, it's there in Interstellar, definitely. It's there in Inception, definitely. It's one of those themes that he's definitely been exploring, and I think it's one of the ones that he's going to explore a lot more in his upcoming film called Oppenheimer, which has got like a huge
Can't wait.
cast. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see that. But also Tenet. That's definitely one that he plays with time. And this film, Dunkirk, is basically his first film that's based on historical events, I'd say. So it's a war that actually happened. It's a moment that actually happened during World War II on the beaches of Dunkirk, and again the spectacle of the score, the performances, and the visuals for me on this film are just iconic as well.
Yeah, I think like there's like a very long one take at the beginning of this film, if I remember correctly. Like they sort of start off in the city and then they
Yeah,
go onto the beach, and then like the beach gets bombed, and it's just like the whole movie in a way kind of almost feels like a one take as well. Like you're just there with the characters, you are like immersed in the scenario,
Yeah.
which I think is really good. I know some people had an issue with how like sort of tame the sort of like violence or graphic, like I don't know, like that whole thing was like they were like this is not like a real depiction of war. Like you would see like body parts flying everywhere and stuff, but like I don't think it was the point of what this movie was. It was more of like you
Yeah.
experiencing this event with these characters, which I thought was really interesting. And yeah, it's like beautifully shot. The score is really good, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's like an underrated war film in my opinion.
Yeah, so one thing that's is another theme that goes throughout his films is people making the ultimate sacrifice, and that's true for people who fought in World War II, for the people who flew the planes, and in this film he like really shows the humanity of the everyday man, like the guys who sacrificed their ships to go across and fetch some of the soldiers who weren't able to be picked up. It's just it shows more that it's like it's a movie about humanity and how we would overcome the odds. Essentially, I think is one of the main sort of takeaways for me. It's the same with Tom Hardy's character at the final scene when there's planes on fire and you just see him kind of standing there. He knows that he's done for. Basically, there's nothing he can do, but he doesn't look sad about it. He kind of just accepts that there's a bigger picture and he's helped move humanity forward by sacrificing himself and his plane.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. And also like Harry Styles was pretty good in this movie. I was quite surprised. Like he had a very good performance. So yeah, I'm keen to see him in more films going forward.
The way people hyped it up so much, I thought he was going to be like the lead character.
Yeah.
He's kind of just like he's just kind of an ensemble.
Yeah,
He's
side
part of
character.
like the side character. But yeah, he was okay, I guess.
It was decent. Okay, what are you feeling?
I prefer his music to his acting.
Yeah, fair. Are you feeling B for best or A for awesome? I'm kind of leaning towards those two.
I don't think it's better than Memento, to be honest. So I would put
So-
it B tier.
B tier, let's do B tier. We haven't got enough in there, so.
I mean, it looked great. Like I love Spitfires. Like those are my favorite plane, and those are kind of showcased a lot in this film because those were the big World War II planes. So in terms of inspiration, it was a really inspirational, aesthetically pleasing, score-driven film. But for me, it was a lacking sort of that emotional connection that some of his other films had, is like Interstellar, for example.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. Okay, last one. We have Tenet, which came out in 2020. Obviously, it's not that long ago, really. So this film was a very interesting one because it was like one of the only films that was actually like brought to cinemas during a pandemic. So like a lot of people didn't actually experience this one in cinema. I went out my way to go watch it because I'm like, I need to see a Chris Nolan movie when it's in cinema. But I know a lot of people didn't see it in cinema. But yeah, I don't know. There's one major issue I have with this film, and I know many people have spoken about it, but it is like the whole dialogue thing. Like, literally every time I watch it now, I literally watch with subtitles because I can't really hear what's going on. And apparently that was like an intentional choice, which I just don't really understand. But besides that, like it's a decent film. It's not like my favorite Chris Nolan film, like not by a long shot. But I do think it is very strong, and it's one of those Chris Nolan films as well that I think has gotten better with repeat viewings. Like I watched it for a third or fourth time recently, and like I actually genuinely like enjoyed it a lot. Like the first time I watched it, I was very confused, and I was like, "What is actually going on here?" But like you start understanding it more the more you see it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, so my initial thoughts about this movie were kind of meh. It was okay. I didn't watch this one in the cinema. I must say I watched it on Amazon Prime. Actually watched it with Alan, so we watched it like at the same time. But one thing that didn't sit right with me was just the way he chose to portray the emotional bond between the characters. So like the main character is just called the protagonist. Like why should you care about someone who's just called the protagonist? So for me, it was just lacking in terms of those dynamics. And in terms of how impressive the film was, it's really impressive. The fact that they had to learn to speak backwards, the fact that they had to learn to do actions backwards and work out how that would look on camera to make it look natural is beyond impressive, in my opinion. But there were a couple of things that I didn't like about this film, and that was, besides the emotional connection, it was the color grade. I didn't think it was great. It's kind of obvious where different cameras were used, and they didn't quite match. It felt like they shot some with like, I don't know, like DSLRs or something. I don't know what the problem was, but because it was made during the pandemic, that probably got something to do with it. Again, the score was amazing in this. This is the first time in a few of his films that he didn't use Hans Zimmer. Maybe you can speak more about that, Dan.
Yeah. Okay. I always don't know how to pronounce this dude's name, but I think it's Ludwig Göransson or something.
Yeah.
But that's the composer. He did films like Black Panther, and he's done a lot of films recently.
The Mandalorian.
Yeah, he did the Mandalorian score. It's true. So he's amazing, and I genuinely think he might be like the next Hans Zimmer. Like Hans Zimmer's still going to be like here for a while, so don't get me wrong. He's still going to be iconic, but I think he's like the new sort of young film composer who's going to be stepping in and like be one of the most iconic film composers going forward. So yeah, really interesting how he like scored this film too. I think he did it because Hans Zimmer was doing work on Dune, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so that was interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with you like on every single point you said. Like I think for me the biggest flaw with this movie is the lack of just emotional connection with any of the characters. Like the film also tries to make you care for the female lead character. Can't remember even what her name is, but it's like, yeah, it's just like you don't really like connect with them, and you don't really care what ends up happening to these characters, which I think makes the film just like it doesn't really have much substance to it almost. And yeah, like I agree, like the action scenes and like how they like there's literal action scenes that are going forward and backwards in the same scene, absolutely amazing. But it's like what's like I don't know. I feel like you can't. And this is like a similar flaw I had with Dunkirk. Like, although it looks visually amazing, like you can't really connect with a film if you don't have that like emotional connection almost. So, yeah, it's a good film. I think that it's definitely one of his most ambitious films, I would say.
Yeah, the whole plane crash scene and stuff.
Yeah, that was like a real plane in a real building. Like, it's crazy. So yeah, very ambitious, but I also think like it was just a bit untangible for a lot of audiences, even hardcore Christopher Nolan fans. So yeah,
I think there are some great things in this film, though. To be honest, again, it's the whole play with the way he plays with time in this film. I really loved. I actually loved the premise of this film, where half the team's moving backwards, half the team's moving forwards. It's kind of an ode back to his earlier films like Memento. A little bit. It's got a little bit of an Inception-y kind of feel at times as well, and the way it culminates into that battle scene at the end. And again, another theme was human sacrifice. It's what's his character's name again? I can't remember any of the characters' names because they're just like kind of unmemorable. So that's kind of where it fell apart for me. But the little visual cues that go throughout the film, like the little pieces of red clothing that the team wear versus the little blue pieces of clothing and stuff. And you have to watch it kind of a few times to understand. Oh, flip! These guys are actually they're part of this team, the temporal pincer. And the whole movie, it's kind of a temporal pincer if you think about it, because half of it's going this way, half of it's going that way, and it meets at the battle, and that's when they cross paths, never to be crossed again, essentially. And I thought that was a really cool take on the spy, like 007 sort of genre. I know that was a big influence of his, especially for this film, and I think that's intentionally why he did less of the emotional side of things. So he focused more on visual storytelling in terms of, there's this guy who's doing cool stuff, cool stunts, and he's doing them in reverse. And there's there's essentially a Bond billionaire villain, and there's a female character who's, although she's done really well in this film, you could almost forget about her at the end of the film and focus on just the visual fight scenes and the car chase in reverse and all that stuff. So I think those are the strongest points of the film.
Yeah. No, I think like Christopher Nolan definitely did try to make this as tangible in some ways to people as possible, like with the whole color, like code thing almost. So like even in that scene where they're like, oh, like flipping over, like one room is like red and the other one's blue, and it's like very obvious what he's trying to say.
Exactly.
But I think there are aspects of that unfortunately still just aren't done that great. And again, like I'm very confused with the whole dialogue thing because like I watched this in a cinema in IMAX in like the best sound, and I still couldn't really hear what was happening a lot of the time. And I know people had that issue with Bane's voice initially in Dark Knight Rises, and they actually adjusted it for the digital and Blu-ray release before they released it. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they've adjusted Tenet. So are we a choice? By no means a bad film. Like even like none of Christopher Nolan's films are bad at all, and even his like average ones are still amazing. So it's a solid film. I just don't think it's near the top for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do think overall it's underrated. Like a lot of people didn't love the film, and it's technically there's nothing to really fault about it, and maybe the sound mix is like one thing, but in terms of the storytelling devices and the action, that's great. That's all the things you love about his previous films kind of were there, except for. Just for me, that's the only place it falls apart is the emotional connection to the characters. But visually, it's great. I love the opening scene when they're in the opera theater and the SWAT team
that was sick.
Comes through and sweeps things. And there's just little moments that really like inspire you to want to be a filmmaker watching this film. Some of the scenes and like how did they do that, and like wanting to go Google afterwards how the film was made and stuff. Like it's definitely got that sort of draw to it.
No, I agree. Okay, so what are you feeling for this one? I'm leaning towards B as well, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards B. It's weird though, because like if you look at this list in its entirety, it's almost like you could put Christopher Nolan in S tier and put in all his films kind of along with it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Everyone else in B tier or whatever. But
yeah,
in terms of Tenet, I think B for best.
B for best. Yeah, I think just to sort of close off, like I agree with you. Like Christopher Nolan has not yet made a bad movie by no means. Like these are all really good films, and like we're nitpicking for bad things almost at times. Like they're all very solid, and I think he's just been a huge influence on filmmaking and movies in general. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, so there's lots to look forward to in the future. Like I said earlier, Oppenheimer is coming out soon. That's going to be a really exciting film, and as a I'd say Christopher Nolan is my favorite director and my favorite filmmaker, so I can't wait to see what's coming up in the future.
No, I agree. Cool. So guys, thank you so much for joining us for this tier list of Christopher Nolan films. If you are keen to hear us talk about more Chris's, let us know in the comments down below. We can maybe do the actors, like we rank the different Chris actors, or we can do something else. I don't know. But this was really fun. So thank you for watching. And thanks for being on, Chris. Where can people find you if they want to check out more of your stuff?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan. It's been really fun. I hope this becomes a series where you chat with some friends and fellow filmmakers. You can find me on Instagram, Chris_Legs. And you can find me on YouTube. I don't post that often, but it's just Chris Leggett. I plan to hopefully post some more stuff in the future. I can do more things like this with Dan and some other friends in the YouTube world. But yeah, thanks for having me. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Dan right now. You're missing out if you don't. He likes to stream. He puts out cool videos. He's just a really fun guy. And I love him, man. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys, for checking it out. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Okay. Shot Chris, bro. That was good, dude.
Shot, man.
Bro, that was really cool. I'm looking forward to editing this.